Today, I want to have a conversation with you all about continuous quality improvement. How significant is continuous quality improvement in the way we do business today? So, I mean, the NP, the Net Promoter Score has now become king in a lot of industries. How well does my customer like what I do? And I have a firm belief that nothing could help our healthcare system better than driving healthcare to be more sensitive to their Net Promoter Score. And really just be aware of who's their customer and what does their customer want. I'm going to show you a slide presentation, first of all, continuous quality improvement. Some of you have heard me say this before, but I truly believe this is the greatest critical issue facing the US, is the fact that healthcare does not look through the lens of CQI. And it is the largest industry in America. And while the rest of the world is really pursuing continuous quality improvement, healthcare is not. This just happens to be some GDP trends by industry. Just to point out two particular industries, healthcare since 1960 has gone from 5% to 20% of our gross domestic product. Manufacturing, just in the last 40 years, has gone from close to 20% down to 11%. So what we've done in this country is we've moved from being a manufacturing country that produces goods and services to a country that fixes people who fall off cliffs. It makes lots of money the more people that fall off cliffs. If we want to look at just continuous quality improvement from the perspective of what are the basic steps that Deming, who's kind of considered as one of the grandfathers of CQI, set forth. Well, starts off with who's the customer. And as simple as that might be, I would say that most people in healthcare, when you really ask them who the customer is, it's pretty confusing and it's not real clear. If you really boil down a primary customer of any client or any company, it's who's paying the bill, who's paying for this service. And in healthcare, there's really only two primary payers in the industry. It's the government and it's employers. Other than that, a very small percent of healthcare is paid for. Well, the healthcare system does not look at the government or employers as their customer. And unfortunately, as a hospital administrator, my only customer I was focused on was the doctors, because the only one that could admit to my hospital was the doctors. So I did everything to try to satisfy the needs of my doctor customer, but they're not paying for the healthcare system. And so healthcare is very broken from the perspective that it doesn't really look at who's my customer, who's paying the bill, and what does the customer want. And of course, if you do apply those principles, you have to not only ask what do they want, but you have to ask what's going to delight the customer? What's going to be the wow factor that really makes the customer happy? And then what are the processes that we need to be measuring, the KPIs, the inputs that are driving to make sure that that customer is delighted? And then when they are apparent, when we've got processes in place to measure whether the customer is delighted, are we removing the variance we see in the process so we can go back to continually delighting the customer? Well, that's how business works. Most business. That is not how healthcare works. It rarely, if ever, defines the buyer of healthcare as their customer. And there's almost no evidence in the entire system that it's working to try to meet those customers' needs. And if you look at all the KPIs and you look at all the things that are being monitored, very seldom are we looking at what the customer really wants and is going to delight them, and how we're going to measure it. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about what are the principles, what are the processes we need to put in place to do that. Well, like I just got through saying, who is the customer? People think, well, it's the patient, it's the provider, it's the employer, it's the insurance, it's the family. Well, it really is government and employers. Together, they pay for 91% of all healthcare. Employers are paying 43% of it, government's paying 48% of it. And when you really look at who the government is, it's who's paying taxes. Well, kind of starts with the employers, who both pay taxes as well as pay their employees so their employees can pay taxes. So almost everything goes back to employers and those who are kind of creating goods and services in this country. Think for just a second about if the employer is the primary customer, what is the relationship in this country between the healthcare system and the CEO of companies? Well, who sits in the middle? The broker, advisors, consultants. They're really a primary cog in the wheel between what the healthcare system's doing and what the business wants. And my goal with these, you all, the aspirational healthcare advisors, is to help train, help you understand so you can play a very different role than most brokers and consultants today are playing when it comes to that interface between the healthcare system and the key employers, which is basically what this slide is saying. You know, it should be the broker that's asking the question, what does the customer want? And it's not just what does the HR director or the benefits manager want? It's really more important to go right up to the top to say, owners of the company, the executive team of the company, those who are making the decision to offer benefits, what is it that they want? And then are you as a broker helping them to identify the monitors that need to be measured? And then are you helping them to identify variance within those? And when you find that variance, are you involved in actually helping to improve the process? Well, many of you know that from my experience, having spoken to more than 1,000 CEOs, very one-on-one, this is what I hear. What most employers want, particularly the business leaders, is they want to attract and retain top talent. They want a healthy, productive workforce. They want employee satisfaction with the benefits that they offer. They wish that they were easy to understand, and they wish it were more affordable. Well, imagine employers, CEOs having dashboards like they do with every other part of their business relative to their health benefits. And that's one of the things that Aspirational Healthcare is working to provide you all as an advisor, the resources and support to help your clients have a dashboard that says how well they're accomplishing those things. And we're going to talk a little bit today about what are some of those systems that we've built to support you in that effort to try to help your customers measure and monitor those things that they want, whether they're getting them. I believe that the reason healthcare is one of the greatest economic issues our country faces today is because brokers are not playing this important role. And I believe that brokers and advisors need to play a very important role at waking up CEOs to this huge blind spot and expect and even demand that their broker play this role. In continuous quality improvement, once you've identified a variance, there's a process called Focus PDCO. Find, organize, clarify, understand, select a group that's going to be best closer to the process, and then create a plan, do, check, act approach to fix it. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that piece, but I did want to share with you today some of the tools that we offer you all as advisors when it comes to measuring and monitoring and having the systems in place to identify whether the employer is getting what they want. First of all, let me show you a survey. First thing that an advisor should do is ask their customer, and particularly the executive of the customer, as to what they want. Now, my experience is those are the 4 things they always say, but it really shouldn't be based on those 4 things if the customer wants something different. Let's assume that that's what they want. Well, then there needs to be a way to measure whether or not employees actually feel like the benefits that the employer offers is both attracting them as well as helping to retain them to work there. So this is a survey that many of our clients have used. In fact, some of the folks on the phone call have used these, but it's a simple 3-page survey that we make available to any of you who want to use it at no cost to simply send out or have us send out or have the employer send out to their employees. Simply is like, I appreciate the benefits offered by my employer. And the questions are generally, I disagree, or I agree, or I'm neutral. Same thing with, I appreciate the culture of my workforce. Same thing, agree, disagree, or neutral. And then what attracted you to seek employment with this current employer? Was it company benefits? Was it workplace culture? Was it compensation and pay? And then what is the likelihood that you will stay with your current employer? Is it company benefits? Is it workplace? Is it compensation? So that kind of that's the first thing that customers want. Am I buying benefits to attract, retain talent? How well are they working? The second thing is, do I like the system? Do your employees feel like this system is providing good care? And that's what this question basically asks is, am I satisfied with the healthcare system available? Is the healthcare system there when I need it? Is it easy to use? And do I feel like it provides good quality care? And that really is the two questions that we ask on this survey that gives us the information that I'll show you, the dashboards that we provide. But we also like to ask this question, which is, who do you feel like in your company has your back? And that becomes an important group, we call it the Trust Capital Group, to help implement new benefit offerings. If you're going to present any kind of change to employees, it's a good idea to identify the people within the company who people trust and let them help design the communication strategies to roll things out. Now I want to show you some examples of the dashboards that we can easily create for you and your clients as it relates to how well are the current benefits working. So this is the example of a dashboard around attract and retain. Again, it's basically showing that in this particular case, most everybody, 96% or 76%, appreciate the benefits that are offered. They appreciate the culture at the work site. And then what attracted you to come work here? Well, in this case, 59% said it was pay, 83% it was culture, 62% said it was benefits. Once they're on, now how much are those benefits keeping you there? Likely they'll stay about the same, culture a little less, and benefits a little less. This is a group that chose to actually alter the questions a little bit, which is fine. This group wanted more of an open-ended question and answer. So they took a couple of the questions off in terms of a standard response and simply made them open-ended questions, which gave the company a lot of information. But for the part that fell into the dashboard, as you can see in this case, what attracted and then likely to stay. In this case, it was pay. It was very little culture and benefits. It was mostly pay. But the dashboard then over time can show whether we're improving things based on the actual benefits that are being offered. This happens to be a company that pay was very important. Culture was not as important. Benefits were not as important. Any questions about the things we've talked about so far?
What kind of response rate did those example companies have from their employees on the survey?
In both of those cases, it was over 60% that responded to the survey.
Were they in office heavy industry? You know, I don't know what the official term
One was technology, very office driven. The other one was very industry, very much out in the out on the road, out in the plant, out in the operations. Let me ask you this: does it make sense when I talk about continuous quality improvement? And Martin, maybe I'll pose this to you because I've had this conversation with Johnny in the past. Does this idea of building CQI into healthcare, particularly in the relationship between the broker and the client, does that make sense to you, Martin? And how important do you think it is?
Well, I think I agree with your statement that the problem in the healthcare system is the broker, and certainly, like you said, every other industry in the country, CQI is paramount, and your client's got to appreciate it. You know, the effort right up front, and once you implement it and continually are striving for it, that's got to have a great impact. It just does.
I was having a conversation just this morning with someone who we were just chatting about, a very large employer who over the last 4 or 5 years, almost all of their decisions relative to their benefits and their benefit design has been made based on relationships rather than any kind of an outcome.
Right.
It's all been about who you knew, who you used to know before, who's now working there, who used to be here, who's there. It's very relationship based and not outcome based.
Yeah. Well, the more systematized anything is, the more efficient it becomes. I mean, it just does.
I want to throw in that I agree with Martin, even though I am a broker myself. I feel like brokers carry, how do I say this? Even though employers are the customer, I feel that it's brokers' responsibility because they've been entrusted with this problem and they've done nothing with it. And I think part of it is that they how they're compensated. So I'm preaching to the choir, but they are not paid to deliver CQI outcomes. And I try and do that and having some success, but you should see the faces of some of my friends. They're really good people and good brokers, but I tell them what I'm trying to do. And I say, hey, maybe you should think about doing this with your clients. And they just go, pass. And so I think that going through the employer and waking up employers to say, hey, I want to pay you based off of CQI outcomes, because if the employer says I want this model, then the broker has to agree to it. So I think it's powerful.
Steve, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just somehow the business decision makers, and it comes back to the CEOs, that they don't know different. They're not willing to, they don't understand. It's just been such a long, entrenched way of doing business to let HR make these kind of multi-million-dollar decisions based on relationships.
With no measurement in place.
On the front end, yesterday I had an interesting experience with a national company. I had offered them some pretty concrete, significant savings. I tried to approach, with this group, I tried to approach it at a level where if they said no, they would, I mean, the offer was really very, very, very good. But rather than dig in and look at it, they they gave me a pat answer, and it was early in the relationship. It wasn't, we weren't down to, the final on anything, but that they opted to go back there. So I'm kind of in that today, and I'm going to stay there for a while to figure out how to make a presentation that puts the HR department, it sounds kind of harsh, a bit at risk if they don't look at it, if they pass, because they don't want to, whether they're lazy. Somebody mentioned that before, so I'm just repeating that, or whatever. But it's that management of the company that needs to, somehow we need to wake them up.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, they do have an obligation in the CAA to be fiduciaries now.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. The other thing I wanted to share with you when it comes to the CQI and what we're serving up to help advisors as aspirational healthcare is a way to also measure whether or not the population is healthy and productive. That's a little more difficult, and it's even more important to look at it on an ongoing basis. So I'm going to share with you a pulse survey that we're using, where we're actually tracking individuals are reporting how they're doing in each of the 8 categories of well-being. This is a little video just showing a pulse survey that we text out to the population, where everyone within 6, 7, 8 seconds can update how they're doing in each of the 8 categories of well-being. Once they've completed that, they can open up an app and they can see their own trends over time for each of the 8 categories: financial, personal environment, physical, nutritional, emotional, social. They can open an app and kind of see how that compares over time. They can look at some trend graphs. And then what we do is we offer the employer a dashboard where they can look at those trends over time, broken down by departments within their company. So they can look at it by employee, by spouse, or by both, and they can say, okay, how are the various categories of well-being doing over time, both annually and by month, so that you can actually measure. Are we making improvement? Are we making a difference? In what areas do we need to put more focus? So the reason I wanted to show that to you today is because we've had a lot of discussions from a lot of point solutions over the last few months, but I wanted to spend a little bit of time today just talking about what's the foundation? What are we doing at the very beginning with clients to build a way to measure and monitor whether we're getting what we want? And I believe that CQI is a critically important part, and we've got to insert that into healthcare. And as we work with you all, and we're doing certifications with you all, it's important to me that brokers understand CQI, they understand the tools that are out there, whether they use our tools or somebody else's, but that their clients are measuring on an ongoing basis to see whether they're accomplishing their business objectives. And then you all, as advisors, can share with us as a group the results aggregately, so we can share with the world that it's working and how well it's working.